Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Great. So I see participants are still joining in. So let's wait for a minute or so that everyone joins in, and then we can quickly get started with today's session. Right. Meanwhile, participants have already joined us. Hello there, and good evening to all of y'all. I hope I'm clearly visible and audible. Let me know in the chat, just like a yes or a no or a thumbs up will confirm that. Okay, so I already see a yes from Nitish. Thank you so much, Nitish. Nitin has raised his hand. So participants, let me tell you, we will be having a live Q&A towards the end of the session. So whatever questions you have, related to upgrad or, the topic that we will be talking about or anything in general, please feel free to post your questions in the Q&A. There's a Q&A that you will see live, in front of your screen. So I'll be picking questions from the Q&A. So you make sure that you're posting all your questions in the Q&A and we'll take it from there. Right, so Nitish and Roshni says, yes, that's great. Right. All right, so we also have our speaker who has joined us. Right. Now, before we, move on and, I still have a minute left before we can start with the session. So participants, y'all can let me know quickly in terms of what background are you coming from and, what is it that you're expecting from today's session. So we get certain understanding in terms of what your expectations are, so that we can customize and make this 1 hour productive for you all. So just feel free to use the chat option, whatever thoughts you have, whatever you've come to learn here. Okay, my voice is breaking. Is this the same with everyone? Nitish has mentioned voice breaking. Okay, no. Nitish, probably that may be your internet because everybody else is able to hear me clearly. Okay, great. So I think it's Nitish, it may be your internet issue or something. You'll have to fix that. I hope I'm clearly audible now, Nitish, to you as well. Right. Okay, great. Okay, so moving back to where I was, yeah. So it's very important, like I said, for us to understand what background are you coming from. Do you come from the product background? You're looking for a transition. Very, very important for us to understand so that we can take the session ahead and, we can customize it accordingly as per what your expectations are and what is the outcome that you're expecting. Right, so you can mention it, in the chat, and what I'll do is it's 7:03, right? So I'm also going to just quickly launch a poll. This is a live poll which says we would like to know you more. And yes, it's exactly what it says. We want to know you more, like I said, in terms of your background, your education, so that we can take the session ahead accordingly. So feel free to, cast your words. Again, this is very important, participants. This is an introduction poll, and I'm looking forward for at least 80 to 90% participation so that I understand you all clearly. And I can then share the analysis and the data points with Ram, who will be, the speaker for today's session. Great. I'm just keeping the poll live for a while. I'm seeing 16% participation. Let's just take it to 80 to 90%. Great. Right, so the poll is live. Meanwhile, I'm going to take this time and, certainly talk about the agenda of the session today. So once again, participants who've, just joined us, because I see the number is increased. So welcome, good evening, and thank you so much for joining us today. I've just published a poll. Just make sure that you're participating in that poll. And talking about myself, I'll start with a quick introduction. I am Shubhada Lokre, and I'm a program manager at Upgrad. So, whatever questions you have probably related to the program, the product management program that we have, or careers or Upgrad in general, I would be the correct person to answer all those questions for you. So make sure that you're posting your questions in the Q&A. Now talking about the topic, like I said, and the topic, right? It's an action plan to land into product management roles. So I'm sure everyone here knows that product management, again, a very trending domain. lot of opportunities in the product management domain. However, there's a skill gap, right? Now, in today's session, we will be talking about how you can land into product management roles. What are the important skills that are required? Who can be a product manager? For all the aspiring PMs out here, very important insight that you will be getting in this session today. We'll also talk about the interview process of cracking PM interviews. What does the interview rounds look like? We'll also take one or two samples, and we'll talk about it as well. So I would just want everyone to be very, very attentive. Let's make this interactive. Whatever questions you have, please make sure that you're posting those questions as well. If you have any thoughts, feel free to raise your hands, or just post or type your thought in the chat, and we would pick it up as well. Great. 75% participation. I'm going to give next 10 to 15 seconds so that we get a few more participation. And I'll use this time to introduce our speaker today. So hi, Ram. Thank you so much for joining us today. Good evening.
Hi, Subhadra. Nice to be back here. I think meeting after a while.
Right. So let me, give you a brief introduction. I'm sure Ram will certainly talk about his journey, but quickly to introduce him, he is a group product manager at Flipkart. He's working with Flipkart for around 7 years. Overall, he has an experience of 11 plus years in building products across multiple domains like e-commerce, tech, and telecom. He's built both consumer facing as well as platform products as well. And today he's here to guide you and give us insights about how you can land into PM roles. He's also into mentoring PMs and startups as well. So amazing personality with great experience. You can call him a product veteran, and he's here to share his insights, his experience. We'll also talk about a few examples of Flipkart as well, because we have product manager directly from Flipkart, right? So just make sure that you're posting your questions, make sure that you're leveraging this 1 hour. And yeah, that is what I have from my end. Great. 81% participation, which is amazing. 86 now, that's great. So I'm going to just share the results. And if you can see, it's just live in front of your screen. I'll just quickly read it out as well so that our participants understand, what is going on actually. So, okay, great. Educational background was the first question. So we have majority of the participants, almost like all our participants are graduates and postgraduates, which means they are sort of, trying to upskill themselves, probably go into product and transition into product roles as well. Are you from product background? Yes. So majority of the participants, that is around 80% participants, do not come from the product background, which means they're here probably to understand how they can get into product management. A few are also from the product background, which means that they would want to upskill and grow and, want to understand that pathway as well, which is again great because we have like a good mix of folks here. Work experience, again, majorly 0 to 3 years. Also, we have 3 to 6, 6 to 10, 10 to 15, and 15 plus years. Amazing. Outcome is to understand whether I can build my career in product management, transition into product roles, and learn more about Upgrade's product management program. Motivation is to enroll into the program and hear from the speaker. Okay, so this is great. Participants who want to enroll into the program, I think you also, it's a very great opportunity for you to ask all your questions so that you can take an informed decision. So yeah, just quick, you can also leverage on the Q&A. So yeah, Ram, this is what I had from my end. Over to you now. Yeah.
Sure, Subhadra. Let me just quickly share my screen.
Yes.
I hope my screen is visible.
It is for me. Participants, quickly let us know so that we can proceed ahead. You can just, okay, it is visible, yeah.
Sure. So, hi folks, I think it's always great to talk to people who are trying to get into the PM domain or are already in the PM domain. It's always interesting to talk to you folks and see the energy flowing in. So today, we are going to talk about how to get into a PM role and how to kind of succeed in that role. That will be the focus of the conversation today. And there are typically some questions that we keep getting from aspiring PMs, and in terms of who can be a PM, how do I prepare for an interview process, what kind of struggles do I face when I get into a PM from a different role? And we'll try to address some of these questions as we move through the session today. I'll try and restrict my presentation to around 30-35 minutes, and we'll leave 15-20 minutes at the end for questions, if any, where we can address whatever concerns you might have. So before we begin, right, a quick intro about me so that you know who you're talking to. So today I build marketplace products at Flipkart. So I work with sellers who sell on Flipkart to enable them to succeed on Flipkart as a platform, help them understand what should they sell, how should they sell, how should they get to more customers on Flipkart and grow on the platform. I started my career back in 2009 as an engineer. So I also come from a development/software engineering background. Worked as a developer for 4 years across a couple of companies. Did my MBA from IIM Bangalore, and I did my MBA primarily in finance and economics, which was no way kind of related to technology or product management. But still, back in 2015, product management was as a career was kind of growing, and there was a lot of hype about the career kind of leading to a better career path over time. So I took that plunge and kind of got into product management. And I've enjoyed my product management role ever since, right? And over the last 7 years at Flipkart, I've experienced working in 4 different product areas, which were completely different in every aspect from each other, right? Like from building a catalog product, which was primarily platform heavy, building platforms, interacting primarily with architects and engineers, doing a lot of technology oriented stuff, to then doing a growth stint where I was primarily interfacing with business, marketing, sales functions to understand how they think about growing their own category, and what kind of help do they need from a technology platform to enable that success, right? Then moving on and doing a user engagement role where leading products like video streaming, user-generated content, where understanding user motivations, building loops to actually help them engage on the platform was the core focus. And today I work with marketplace sellers where sellers just care about making business on Flipkart and earning more money, and how do you understand those motivations and build products accordingly, right? So I think working on this diverse set of products has given me that exposure and learning, which I want to share with you today through the course of this discussion. So as we begin, right, so these are some of the kind of topics that we'll try to cover today, and these are influenced by the kind of questions that typically people come up with, or aspiring PMs come up with. And hopefully we'll address some of those, and whatever we don't, and we can cover it in the Q&A section, right? Starting off, I think who can be a PM, right? And today product management is a trending domain. A lot of people seem to be interested in getting into this domain, but it's also very vaguely defined. Like there are the role kind of differs a lot from different sector to sector and from company to company. Right, and there are product management roles which exist in hardware companies, like for example Xiaomi, which is building mobile phones, to Google, which is building a Chromecast device, to actually platforms like Flipkart or Amazon or anyone else who are building technology products. So there are product management roles across different sectors and industries, and there are companies also varying from size of the company being from like 10,000 plus employees to a startup which is in the very initial stages of evaluating its idea and building a product which is probably 10-20 people odd. Every companies of different sizes of domain have PM roles today, and all of them require different kind of skill sets to succeed in a PM role, right? And so the definition of a PM role today is slightly fungible, and it differs across industries and sectors. And as you get into a particular role, it's prudent for you to kind of understand what the expectations in that role is and kind of prepare accordingly to succeed in that role, right? But having said that, I think to be a PM at a very high level, there are 3 core skill sets that you need to possess to succeed as a PM, right? I think, and as long as you have that, anyone can get into a PM role and start experiencing that, right? The first and foremost is having empathy, and showcasing that, right? Empathy for not just your customers, but also your stakeholders, your business counterparts, everyone. Understanding what they need, how do you make them succeed? Again, you're eventually building for your customers, but stakeholders also come with a opinion of their own, and kind of they have their own plan of making customers successful on the platform. So understanding all of their motivations and building products is a core skill set that you need to develop. The second core skill set is having good problem solving skills, right? I think, I mean, at the end of the day, you are solving a potential problem, right? And I see a lot of PMs, a lot of people who think that as a PM, my primary role is to generate a lot of ideas, or like come up with innovative ideas in terms of how to build something or to solve something, right? Or they might think that whoever generates the most amount of ideas is going to succeed as a PM. But to be very practical, job of a PM is not to is to primarily identify the right problems to solve, right? And that's where having great problem solving skills is a mandatory thing to succeed as a PM. Understanding what the real problem is, breaking it down, and things like that, right? And the third core skill set is having good storytelling skills, because you have to understand that this is a role where you have minimal authority and you have to still influence all your key stakeholders, be it engineering, be it business stakeholders, be it your leadership, be it your strategy teams, be it your legal and compliance teams, right? Or be it your marketing teams. You engage with a lot of these cross-functional stakeholders on a day-to-day basis, and you don't have much of an authority over them. And in order to influence them, you need to be very good at selling your vision, selling your idea, and influencing them through your storytelling skills, right? So these are the three core ingredients that need to be there for you to succeed as a PM. And it's not like all of these, I mean, these are not learnable. I think it is as you practice, as you involve in a role which is offering your opportunities to develop the skill sets, you learn on the job and kind of become better at it, right? Now, traditionally, we've seen engineers and marketers move into product management roles more often. And there's a reason to that, because engineers understood technology and marketers understood customers and sales functions. So they bring one of the skill sets that is required to be a successful PM, and that is why they kind of kept moving to product management more often. But today we don't see such boundaries existing, right? And at Flipkart, for example, we hire people who have been architects, who have been preparing for very different streams, nothing related to technology. Like they might be UPSC aspirants, they want to get into product management, right? Like we hire ex-army people to also product management. So there is no restriction in terms of who can get into product management. Anyone who has this core skill sets can get into product management, right? And there's no limitation also in terms of what kind of educational background or what kind of experience level you need to come in. As long as you can showcase your skills on these three fronts, it should be good enough for you to get into product management, right? And one of the key questions that I keep getting over and over again is, do I need to know coding? Do I need to have a software background to get into product management? No, absolutely not. We are not expected to code, or you are not expected to be a computer science engineer or come from a software background. Obviously, being from a software background will probably ease it out for you to transition into a product management role in the first couple of months or 3 months in the beginning. But after that, it's all the same, right? And it's easy to get started even on those aspects when after getting into a product management role. And we'll talk about the interview process and get to know why this is not important. But to just address that elephant in the room, you don't need to know coding, or you don't need to come from a software background to get into a product management role. Now, let's say you seem interested in the PM role, and these are the three core skill sets that we talked about. You already have an inclination to develop those skill sets, and you want to get into a PM role. Now, how should we go about it, right? I think there are three basic things that you need to do. One is start thinking like a PM, develop your PM skills, right? And there are different ways to do that. The first obvious way is where you go through a structured program, right? Either a program which is like an MBA or a postgraduate in product management, or kind of professional courses which platforms like Upgrad kind of provide you, right? Which have a clear template in terms of what are the skill sets that you need to develop to succeed as a PM, and they teach you in a very structured and experiential way. One thing you have to understand is product management is not a theoretical kind of a role, right? It is a very experiential role, and you learn more as you practice and you use it on a day-to-day job basis. So some of these courses enable you to learn that stuff and practice with your peers and kind of mentors, which helps you learn better. The other thing is you also need to start thinking like a PM on a day-to-day basis, right? Like as and when you're, let's say, using a particular app on your phone, or like going through using a physical product. Let's say I'm using a smart TV tomorrow, right? Like you need to start thinking like a PM. Like what are the things that you love about using that product? What solves your pain points in a more effective way? What are the deficiencies in that product? If I were a PM, what kind of things can I do to make the product better, right? So start thinking like a PM on a day-to-day basis. Be more observant, identify patterns, and like realize, be conscious about what is working, what is not working in the products that you are experiencing on a day-to-day basis, and apply your PM hat to that, right? And as you do that, you become better at it. The third, and it's a very neglected aspect, and people seem to downplay this a lot more often, but uh, a lot of PMs go through the same struggles or same experiences that each of you might be feeling today, right? So it's also important to network and kind of learn from other experiences, so that you try and avoid facing those same struggles as you begin, as far as possible, right? Like as you talk to people, you understand what they're working on, how are they building their products, what are the metrics they are optimizing for, right? And you can learn from that experience and kind of avoid those mistakes when you start off on your PM journey. Now, given that, let's say you do all of this stuff and develop your PM skills, the other important part is also, how do I communicate this to recruiters or people who are looking for PMs, right? And it's not enough to, if I know stuff, it's not enough for them to get convinced that I am ready to be a PM, right? So you need to signal it to them in certain way that you're ready for being a PM, right? That's where I think either you go with a degree or a certification which you can show it on your resume, and people get confidence that you've gone through a structured program, so you have the basic ingredients in place. Or you probably develop a portfolio which showcases that you have practiced this function well enough, right? And typically when you develop a portfolio, there are different kind of things that you can add to your portfolio, right? For example, let's say you take an app, you try to, and there are a lot of influencer-led videos which kind of talk about some of these aspects today on the social media platforms. Like for example, app tear downs, right? Where you basically dissect an app, understand how it functions, where does it do well, where does it not do well. So you can basically pick any app that you use in a day-to-day basis and try to do its tear down and create a kind of report out of it and add it to your portfolio. That will just showcase that you understand the product and you understand the motivations behind it. You understand who the users of that product are. You understand what the goals of the product are. That will help communicate to the recruiter that you understand some of these things. You can wear the hat of a PM and try to build a roadmap. Let's say I were to ask you, how would you improve Flipkart if you're a PM at Flipkart? Can you develop a roadmap for it, right? So work on some of these things and try to create kind of reports or usability studies of some of these platforms and add it to your portfolio, which will showcase that you know this stuff, right? And the last and most important thing is having a customized resume for a PM role. So this is a typical mistake that I see people doing, right? Like they try to use the same resume which they've been using in the previous role, be it an engineering role or some sales role or some other role, right? Which doesn't work, right? Like a PM role looks very different. And typically you need to cover 4 aspects when you rewrite your resume to apply for a PM kind of a role. One is talked about responsibilities, like what is the platform that you want? What is the problem statement that you want? Let's say I as a PM own, how do I make grow the income of drivers on Ola or Uber as a platform? Let's say that is the problem statement I'm owning, right? So clearly articulate what is the problem statement you're owning as a PM, or what are the responsibilities do you have? And it doesn't, I understand that many of you come from a background who are not PMs right now, but it's still in your current function as well, you would be having some responsibilities, right? Try to zoom out and understand how you're contributing to your company, to your org, and articulate that problem statement in terms of what you're owning today. The second is talk about launches, right? And launches might not be just in your current job. If you think you've done a project or an internship kind of thing, or you did a portfolio where you try to design a certain product, try to talk about what kind of products have you built and launched, and what are the kind of metrics you thought should be measured to evaluate if that product was successful, and what were those metrics, right? Talk about those elements as well. And the third and most important thing is also showcase your leadership skills. And We'll talk about what kind of leadership skills are required to when you are trying to get into a PM role, and try to showcase those. Try to showcase your proactiveness. How did you go and contribute to the company or your org in terms of beyond your regular responsibilities? Did you take an initiative of your own? Did you do anything in a situation where there were all odds were against you, right? Like if stakeholders were not convinced with you and no one was behind you, how did you go about convincing your stakeholders about taking up the initiative that you felt was important for you to pursue, right? So how do you showcase some of these leadership skills on your resume? Using instances and examples also becomes critical, right? And some of these you don't talk about when you're preparing a resume for other roles. So be conscious about this and prepare your resume accordingly, where you talk about some of these things. Now, let's say you do all of this, right? I think the next biggest concern becomes, how do I uh, find opportunities which exist for a PM role, right? And the easiest thing to do is move internally, right? Like, because very practically speaking, in India, the openness to accept people from other roles and switching functions or roles is slightly limited, right? They're not everyone, not every company is kind of open to trying out people who are new to a specific domain, right? So the best sort that you have today is move internally, right? Where you either, if you have a goodwill within the company, you have people who believe in you, who trust you, leverage that goodwill to identify side projects that you can do, or shadow other PMs that you're already working on, and try to move internally after a 6 month stint or 3 month stint. That's the best sort you have at the job, right? If not that, you can look at doing internships, short internships, which might be paid, might be unpaid. And you might feel, many times I get a question that this is an unpaid internship, should I do it? Like, I'm looking at a potential pay cut, should I take it up, right? I think the bigger question that you need to answer in your mind is, evaluate the short-term risk versus the long-term potential of it, right? If you're convinced that product management is something that you want to do in the next 10 years, 15 years, it's okay to take a pay cut, that it's okay to kind of do an unpaid internship for a 6 months or 1 year time, as long as you develop those skills and you also get the benefit of getting the product management tag on your resume. And then you can leverage that in the longer term, and you'll be able to compensate all that you've lost in the longer term, right? So don't worry about that. So optimize for the long term as much as possible. The third, and which is the preferred option in India primarily, is going through campus recruitment. If you happen to do a degree from a top tier engineering institute or a B school, then multiple startups hire APMs and PMs from these institutes, and you can get into some of the top-notch roles through these campus interviews. If nothing of this works, you obviously go to lateral hiring process. And one of the most important things here is always keep your LinkedIn profile up to date, right? Like, I think a lot of people don't do that, right? And they wait for certain times in the year or like certain milestones in their career to kind of keep their LinkedIn profile updated. But do this consciously on a recurring basis so that it reflects your latest roles and responsibilities in the best possible manner. And seek referrals, right? I think referrals is the easiest way to get into the recruiter's mind and get shortlisted. And otherwise, because of this sheer demand supply gap which exists in India, there are a lot of PMs who kind of are looking for roles within companies. Getting into the recruiter's mindset is difficult, and referrals can be an easy way to kind of get into a recruiter's mindset, right? And also, there are a lot of forums where you get to attend like networking events with other PMs who are working in other companies. Those are also good ways to kind of identify opportunities that exist in other platforms and kind of seek them and work towards getting into them, right? Now, I think if you do all of this well and you get into the recruiter's mind, the next most important thing that you need to crack is the interview process, right? And we'll spend the next 10-15 minutes and bulk of our time today on discussing this, which will address a lot of your questions and how to get ready for a PM role as well, right? So, and this is a broad slate in terms of what you get evaluated for during an interview process. Obviously, the process varies slightly here and there based on the company you're getting evaluated for and all of that. So typically, you have three kind of things that you get evaluated for. First is the set of competencies that you get checked for. Those are the hard skills that you need to develop to succeed in a PM role. The second is the leadership skills, which you need to kind of use on a day-to-day basis to influence stakeholders and to succeed in that role. The third is just the attitude aspects of you as a person and kind of how you operate in a day-to-day life, right? We'll talk about each of these in sequence. So typically, when you talk about competency checks, right, like a lot of companies start with doing a basic screening first, right? Either they take you through an exploratory round discussion where they talk about your current experience, why you're interested in a PM role, how you showcase those skills in your current work experience, all of that. Alternatively, some companies also give you a case study to work on. They give you a problem statement. For example, let's say you're working in a net tech company and you see that children are not engaging enough. They watch a video for 10 minutes and drop off. They don't engage with the video completely to the end. How would you drive engagement? How do you keep children motivated while watching learning videos, right? That could be a problem statement that you get with, right? And you're expected to kind of build a case study around it, like how you look at that problem. How do you, if you are a PM, how would you solve that problem? What kind of solutions would you propose? What kind of metrics would you propose to evaluate success of your solutions? All of that, right? So typically, companies do a screening round where you either get a exploratory interview done or a kind of case study which you need to build and submit. After which you go through a set of 3-4 rounds. One of those rounds happens to be, for example, problem solving or execution, right? Like, and we'll talk about some of these in details. Problem solving, the focus is evaluating your structuring skills, your metrics understanding, all of that. Then you go through a product thinking round where you typically where the customers at and try to build something out and see how it performs on the real world marketplace. The next is having a tech understanding where you basically and problem solving and product thinking rounds are typically done by other PMs in the company. Tech understanding or system understanding is a round which is typically taken by the engineering team, and their motive is to understand would they be comfortable working with you, can you understand what they are trying to communicate to you, and all of that. And then it follows with a business round. Again, this is optional. Not all companies kind of do a business round. Here, you'll again be working with business stakeholders, either marketing stakeholders or growth stakeholders and the objective of this discussion is, again, can you understand business metrics? Can you understand what they are trying to achieve in the next 3 months, 6 months, and can you help them achieve those goals, right? Those are the kind of aspects. Now, the initial case study or the screening round and the business sense round are optional. Some companies do it, some companies do not do it. But 2, 3, 4 are generally like mandatory in every company that you interview with. The second key track is the leadership skills, right? And typically, because it's a product management role where you need a lot of influencing skills, you need alignment with a lot of other stakeholders. People want to understand how you go about influencing stakeholders and how you go about managing conflicts. On a day-to-day basis, a product manager, you'll be in situations where your stakeholder is not aligned with what you are proposing. They have a different point of view, or they look at data in a different way from you do, or whatever idea you are proposing, they are not convinced if that makes sense or that will be impactful. So how do you resolve those conflicts? How do you go about influencing them and selling your idea? And if at all, if you're not able to convince them, are you open to disagree and commit and kind of move forward with whatever the suggestion is? That becomes important, right? And it's important to manage relationships and maintain positive relations with stakeholders, because you'll always be working with them on a longer term basis, right? So you cannot have rough feathers with them. And as you develop as a PM, you also need to build a product strategy, build a longer term vision for your product. You need to showcase that vision to leadership, fight for getting more bandwidth. Like today, let's say you have 5 engineers and the vision or the roadmap that you put in place needs 10 developers or 10 engineers to work with you. How do you convince your leadership to give more resources to you? How do you make them kind of rally behind you? That's where being a better communicator, being a better storyteller becomes important. And while you go through the interview process, subconsciously, every interviewer is also trying to gauge you on how open you are to these things and how you manage all of these situations during your day-to-day life, right? And the third bit is attitude checks, right? Like where I think the first and foremost thing is ownership, right? As a PM, you are on the driver's seat, right? And you're expected to drive things. You are not supposed to. There's no one who is going to come to you and tell you do this, or whatever, right? And obviously, as you're getting started as a PM, in your first role as a PM or an entry level PM, there will be people who are mentoring you or guiding you. But over time, you're supposed to lead the way, and you're supposed to drive things, right? So it's important for you to show that ownership skills and proactiveness to go all out and solve things, and not just like stop at identifying problems, but also find solutions to whatever problems you face, right? Like not just problems in the product, but problems in your day-to-day life as well. The second thing is having that curiosity and being open to learning, right? Like as a PM, you are supposed to be a jack of all trades, right? You need to know design, you need to know engineering, you need to know sales, you need to understand business, and a lot of things will not be known to you in the beginning. So you have to be very open in your mind, and you have to kind of be open to absorbing as much as knowledge and information keeps coming to you, and keep learning. And it can be overwhelming at some times, but it is important for you to have that open mind and also put in the effort to keep learning over time, right? And the third thing is resilience and persistence, right? I think, like we mentioned, you'll always be in situations where your stakeholders are not convinced, right? And you feel that I've tried to convince them twice, but they're still not convinced. Should I give up, right? But it doesn't work that way, right? And as companies get bigger, and there will be more dependencies, right? In order to ship one product, you'll have to work with maybe not just 5, but 10, 15 different cross functions, right? The bigger the company, more the dependencies and more the stakeholders that you need to work with, and more the effort that you need to put in to convince them and align with your vision and roadmap, right? And that's where you need to be very persistent, keep repeating, keep doing the same things over and over again, and not giving up and trying to get your stuff done, right? So that's what you need to showcase resilience, right? So during your interview process, people will try to push you as much as possible, and the intent is not to. Sometimes candidates feel that when they're like, let's say they're being asked a question and they come up with 5 different answers, and the interviewer asks them, let's say these 5 are not enough, like can you come up with 3 more answers or whatever, right? Sometimes candidates feel that probably the interviewer has some specified answer in mind, is just looking to hear that answer out, but that's not the case. People are just trying to push you to the extreme and try to get more out of you, and see how you perform in kind of a situation where all doors are closed and you don't have any other doors open, right? So I think a lot of these checks also are try to evaluate you on the aptitude. Now we'll go into the 3 things that we talked about, right? The 3 core competencies: problem solving, product thinking, and tech understanding. We'll cover each of these one by one quickly. We'll talk about what the expectations are and what kind of sample questions that you receive. Now, before we get into that, because I'm from Flipkart, I can give you a quick snapshot of how the Flipkart interview process also looks like. So typically it starts with an exploratory discussion or a case study, like we said, which is a screening round. Then you follow it up with 3 discussions around problem solving, product thinking, and business understanding. Then we have a tech understanding round, and the last is a hiring manager discussion, where hiring manager basically evaluates you for fitment with the role, what kind of domain you've come from, how well can you adjust to the current domain, what kind of work culture that you come from, can you adjust here, are you open to learning, feedback, all of that. Now, if you're an APM who is being hired from campus, you typically get evaluated for 1, 2, 3. If you're a PM who is getting hired from campus, you additionally get interviewed for 4. And if you're someone who is getting hired laterally, then you also get evaluated for 5. And hiring manager is a round which is common to everyone who tries to get into a PM role at Flipkart. So now, like quickly going into each of these competency rounds, right? Like the first is problem solving. I think, like I mentioned earlier, the primary focus is to understand, can you structure a problem? Can you formulate hypothesis, right? Where you need to be able to explore the breadth and depth both of the problem, and do you have a sound understanding of the metrics? And there are typically 3 to 4 different type of questions that you get asked, right? The most frequent question is some kind of an RCA question, or a diagnosing a problem, right? Where you say, let's say, the ride cancellations for Uber are increasing, and can you build your hypothesis as to why this might be happening and how do you address that? That can be a question. The other kind of question that you see is like you being asked, if you are a PM at TikTok, what are the kind of metrics that you would instrument? How do you evaluate the success? How is TikTok doing? Is it on the right track or not? You might also get guesstimate oriented questions, like let's say Google Play Store. There are people download apps from Google Play Store. If you are at a PM at Google, how would you estimate the kind of revenue or the annual sales that Google Play Store makes? How do you come up with that estimate, right? So where you have to break down the problem, like what are the different revenue streams of Google Play Store, how do and break down the problem further. Like there is probably, let's say, commission is the revenue model, right? Then I have to think about how many downloads are happening, what is the typical commission per download, what is the percentage of apps which offer you are paid apps and not free apps. You have to decompose revenue equation into multiple different things, do a bottoms up estimate and come up with that eventual number. You also get asked about market entry based questions, like for example, should WhatsApp get into e-commerce? Those are questions that you also get asked, right? So and at entry levels, primarily you get asked questions on one or two. As you graduate up and you're being hired for more senior roles, you can get asked for 3 and 4 as well. Now the second core competence is product thinking round, where the focus is, again, structured approach is common, both in problem solving and product thinking, because I think that's a bare minimum, right? For you being able to break down the problem and look at different aspects of its mandatory. There's no two ways about it. But the additional things that you also need to get evaluated for is can you understand the customer? Like, can you dig deeper? Can you be in the customer's shoes? Understand what his real motivations are? A lot of times people fail at this, right? People assume that their problems are customers' problem, but it's also important to be in the customer's shoes and think firsthand, right? You also get to showcase your prioritizing skills. How would you prioritize different problems? What problem is important for you to solve in the next 3 months? What should you not solve in the next 1 year? You also get evaluated for, do you solve problems using technology or not, and can you evaluate the different risks that come with using a particular solution? Those are typically things that you get evaluated for, right? And the kind of questions that you get asked, many times people ask you, what is your favorite product, like which you use on a day-to-day basis, and then lead that with certain questions. When let's say you name Google Photos as the favorite product, then people will ask you, if you're a PM at Google Photos, how would you build it? What are the features you develop next? How would you build a roadmap for it? Or they might give you a very pointed question about building a certain product feature or improving a certain product, like how to build a polling feature for WhatsApp. WhatsApp doesn't have a polling feature today, right? So how do you go about building it? Or how do you design a refrigerator for kids? So there are design oriented questions or product improvement questions that you get generally asked for. The third competency which we talked about is the tech understanding, right? Here, I think again addressing the general question that we get, you don't need to understand coding. You're not asked to code, or you're not asked to write algorithms. You're never asked to do that. But the expectation is that you need to understand basic terminologies. Like, for example, if you're working on a web product, you understand what a domain is. You understand what an API is. And it's easy to learn some of these from the social media today, right? Like develop a basic understanding of these nuances, which will help you converse easily. It's like a language, right? Where if you know English, it will be easier to communicate with people who know English. Similarly, if you know these terms, it will be easy for you to communicate with engineers and work more effectively on a day-to-day basis. The second most important thing is, can you think long-term? Don't solve in a hackish way or for the immediate use case that you have in hand. Can you think 2 years down the line? Can you think what are the engineering capabilities I need to build to enable business in the next 2 years and build accordingly, right? I think those are the typical things that you get evaluated for. Most 90% of the times you get asked about your past experience of working with engineers, what kind of challenges you faced, how did you go about resolving those challenges, what are the learning that you had. But sometimes you also get asked about building certain products. If you have to, let's say, build a parking reservation system, how do you build it from a tech standpoint? What are the different components? Like, you'll have to think, for example, is it a upfront parking? Do I have to reserve a park, or do I do a real-time parking? What kind of do I have to pay online, or do I have to pay offline? So what are the different systems I need to build to enable this product to work, right? So these are some of the kind of questions that you typically get asked for. Now, I know we are running short of time, so I'll just take 5 more minutes and kind of address some of the things that I've observed over time, right? Like, the first thing is, what are the kind of typical mistakes that people do while going through the interview process, or also while working as a PM in a company, right? The first and foremost I see is people being very solution oriented, right? Like, where a lot of PMs or a lot of people tend to think that idea generation is same as product management. Like, if I generate hundreds of ideas, or I'm more innovative, or I'm more creative, then I'm a better PM. And that leads to them tending to jump into solutions. When in an interview scenario, people are asked a question, the flush of energy the rush of energy makes them jump into solutions and propose 3 or 4 ideas, right? It's important to take the step back and kind of be problem focused. Ask more whys, try to uncover the problem as much as possible. Try to ask clarifying questions to the interviewer. Try to understand the problems because ideas can come from anywhere. Solutions can come from anywhere. As if you understand the problem well, you'll also be able to solve it well. The second part is people make a lot of assumptions, right? Like, and we tend to rely on the first instinct that comes to our mind, and a lot of times that is not correct. And I'm talking from experience here, and because a lot of our biases, a lot of our experiences, beliefs we've had in the past shape our assumptions. Like, for example, let's say you're asked a question, how do you build a bookshelf for kids, right? And the assumption that we automatically make in our mind is we are talking about how do a physical bookshelf, right? But today we are in a world where people read books online as well. So can it be a digital bookshelf? So that's an assumption we made initially ki it's a physical bookshelf. So how do you question your beliefs? How do you take a step back, think consciously, and wherever required, kind of ask the interviewer and clarify your assumptions or state them explicitly that this is an assumption I'm making. Is it fair enough to go ahead, or should I look at some other aspects as well? So try to be as explicit and as possible, right? The third thing is not having a good decision-making framework, right? A lot of times, like when people are asked about how do you prioritize between these 5 problems, what would you pick, what would you not pick? People go by gut. People say that I'll pick 2. And when they're questioned, why did you pick 2? Why do you think you should not do 3 or you should not do 4? They're not able to justify their decision. Or when they think about corner cases, you haven't thought it through, right? So it's important to also create a framework, right? While in the interview process, and don't be bookish here, no need to be bookish here. You need to first kind of establish what is the set of criteria using which I'll make a decision, and use it very objectively to arrive at a decision, right? These are some suggestions or kind of things that people should do to perform better as a PM. And just one last slide before I end. As I see PMs kind of getting into PM roles and starting on this role, I see 3 things that they generally struggle with, right? The first thing is influencing without authority. So we have to realize that you are in a role where none of the functions kind of report to you, and everyone has an opinion, and everyone has different incentives, motivations at play. So for you to succeed in a role, you have to understand what the stakeholder motivations are and influence them accordingly. Second is you are in a driver's seat, and it can be very overwhelming at the beginning. You need to have a knowledge of all functions. You need to set a vision, a 2-year vision for the product, and it's not easy to do so. Even experienced PMs struggle to do this right? And it's okay. It's okay. You have to realize that it's okay. These are general struggles everyone goes through. So it's okay to be nervous about it, but also work diligently kind of to address that, right? And the third thing is, I think, what if I fail as a PM? I think you have to understand that it's a role which teaches you a lot of different things, and it's very easy to, if let's say in a worst case scenario, you want to get out of a product management role and move into something else, it will be very easy. It will be very seamless. The kind of skills that you develop as a PM are fungible and can be applied across other roles. So it's not difficult to get out of a PM and get into some other role as well, right? So it's about being aware about some of these challenges and working towards solving it, rather than kind of giving up and being too much worried about it, right? So I'll just stop here in the interest of time, and I will take Q&A around this and address any of your questions or queries you might have.
Right, great. So thank you so much, Ram, because I was also actually totally into the session, and I think this was very insightful and very helpful. Thank you so much for this. Participants, we'll just quickly start with the Q&A. I see certain questions in the Q&A. Before that, just one thing I want to address, because in the first poll, I saw that a lot of participants wanted to enroll into the program. I hope this particular session has given you a certain understanding. If no, then just feel free to post your questions in the Q&A. We are starting with the Q&A round right now, and I've also shared link of the program. So meanwhile, you can also check out the program, the syllabus, and whatever skills Ram spoke about. You can explore the program, the syllabus as well. Great. So I'm just quickly starting with the Q&A. Ram, if you could just stop presenting your screen. Yeah. Great. So the first question is from Nitish. How can I get an internship in Flipkart in data science roles, such as analytics, business intelligence, etc.?
Yeah, I think I'm not sure of your background. If you're someone who is still pursuing your undergrad, then there are opportunities out there. You can go through our careers page and kind of reach out to either apply through the careers portal or reach out to people who are working in those functions to give you a referral. Those are the good ways to go through an internship role.
Right. He says I have 5+ years of experience in marketing.
Then awesome. I think you should be able to reach out to people who are already working at Flipkart and kind of look for interesting opportunities out there. People would be open to always kind of considering you.
Great. Thank you so much, Ram, and thank you, Nitish, for your question. I hope we were able to answer it. Great. The next question that I have is from Mihika. Is it required to do paid certification courses? Which courses shall we do?
I think there are a couple of things which you need to understand. It one is learning product management is a very experiential stuff, right? You learn as you practice. So find opportunities to practice the skill with your peers, with your mentors, and as you do that, you become better and you're more prepared for also cracking an interview and succeeding as a PM, right? And second is having something to showcase to recruiters that you're ready for the role. Like, how do you signal? Having a degree, having a certification will help you signal to a recruiter that you're ready for the role. So whichever things enable you to get these two should work fine, as long whether it is paid or unpaid.
Right. So here I would just like to add, Mika. See, the thing is, we have discussed about what are the important skills required for a PM, right? Now, what you can do is you can map those skills to all the programs that you've been researching about. Whichever programs, offer and, help you learn those skills, I think that would be the correct program that you should go for. Also, you can also check out our program as well. I've just posted the link to our program as well. Great, and thank you so much for your question. The next question is from an anonymous attendee. How can a salesperson get transition into PM role?
I think it's not any different depending on whether you're a salesperson or anything else. I think the other, what you like Subhada was also mentioning, we talked about the core competencies that you need to succeed as a PM. So try to map whatever skills you have developed working in a sales role to those competencies. Let's say you have good amount of knowledge or experience in 2 out of those 4 skills. Try to go through courses to develop the remaining 2 skills before you apply for a PM role. That's the way to look at it. And that applies for any other role, not just a sales role.
Right. Also, to give an example here, anonymous attendee, I'm not sure what your name is because you've not shared it. But if I think I would be a live example where even I was from the business development background, and I have also transitioned to a program manager role, which is you can say similar, not like completely same, but somewhere relatable and relates to the product management role as well. I also did a product management program, and I was able to have a transition. So it's not that there is any resistance in terms of what background are you coming from to get into a product management role. And Ram also clearly mentioned in the first few slides, if I'm not wrong, that you don't need to have any coding background, or you do not need to have any tech background to get into a PM role. So I think there's this live example of me that you have in front. Great. Again, which specialization in PM do you think is perfect for an aspiring PM who comes from an edtech background?
That's a pretty hard for me to answer because there are different kind of PM roles out in the industry, right? There are growth oriented PM roles, there are platform oriented PM roles, there are data oriented PM roles, there are horizontal PM roles, and we've talked about this in one of the previous webinars as well. So it's for you to probably try out some of these roles and evaluate what do you fit into better and what do you enjoy doing better, and accordingly choose, right? So there's no prescribed rule here, I would say.
Right, that's right. It's just that when you sort of specialize yourself with specialization, it just makes you more and more visible. The opportunities, the pool of opportunity increases. That is how you can look at it. But if you have like a clear goal, that for example, I'm an aspiring PM, I want to get into growth roles. then you can go for a growth specialization. So that way, if you are unclear in terms of which domain or which area that I should go in, then you should probably think of doing some more specialization. But if you have a clear roadmap, then you can just go for one specialization as well.
Yeah, and just to add, every company, every product will have all of these different diverse set of roles. It's not like an edtech company will only have a growth role and not the other ones. Every company has all kind of roles, and it's easy to also keep switching from one kind of a product role to another product role within the company. So I would encourage people to try out different things and evaluate what works out for them. Now, the other point is in the shorter term, getting into a role which is familiar or which is similar to what you've been doing till now will ensure more success in the shorter term. But in the longer term, as you get exposure to different kind of roles, you'll know better and you can cross-pollinate your ideas and thinking across the board.
Correct. Great. Thank you so much for that question. Okay, so again, a question from an anonymous attendee. Okay, which PM courses shall we do? Is it required paid certification courses? For changing the role internally to PM, what should be done? Okay, so there are many questions in one question. So yeah, I think first two we have addressed, kind of it's about the skills that you're looking forward to learn. It's about the core competencies that you need to master. For changing the role internally to PM, what should be done? I think that this also we have kind of had a word about. Fourth is most of the PM jobs require at least 1 year of experience as PM, but how are we supposed to enter into the job when we don't have any experience? Most of the companies require experience, and how do we enter into PM? This fourth one we can kind of address now.
Yeah. So like I mentioned during my talk as well, in India particularly, many companies and people kind of look for prior experience. But the way to circumvent this is building a strong portfolio, right? Like where you actually work on certain case studies and add it to your portfolio and use it to showcase to recruiters that I'm ready for a PM role and I know the skill sets, right? That is, and kind of preparing your resume accordingly as well, right? That's one way to get into it. The other way is, like I mentioned, switching your role internally, right? Where people don't need for that experience, right? People understand that you're trying to move into PM role and give you that opportunity. Yeah, and when we talked about some of these things, internship and other routes also are available. Or if nothing works, go for a higher study. And like when you're doing an MBA or we're going through a professional course, they have structured opportunities for you to get placed at different companies, which will also open up those opportunities for you.
Right. Thank you so much for that question. The next question that I'll quickly take is from Sudarshan. Is it possible to get into an APM role after a full-fledged PM program?
It depends from company to company. Flipkart doesn't kind of recruit APMs laterally. We only hire APMs from campuses. But a lot of other companies, which I know, which is in the market in the world, also kind of hire APMs laterally. So you can go to it through a full-fledged program as well.
Right. But again, Sudarshan, it's not that you should be restricted to few companies, right? Because I think it's important, if you are looking for that first transition, it's important that you break into a product role, rather than looking for a company or a brand. So yeah, I think if you're looking forward to get into a APM role, I think you should go ahead with the program, or you should start preparing yourself in that direction, basically. Great. Okay, so one more question, which is in the chat that I'll be taking. I'm currently pursuing BBA. Can I get into product management roles after completing BBA, or I have to complete MBA? Ram, if you could answer this one.
There's no limitation. There's no compulsion for you to do an MBA and get into product management. I would rather say utilize those 2 years to learn on the job, get into a PM role as early as possible, and spend time learning that job rather than doing an MBA. So earlier the better. There's no two ways about it.
Right. Okay, great. Thank you so much, Harsh. I'm just quickly taking next questions as well, so we can answer most of them. Is there any benefit after completing PMP certification and move to product management? This is a question from Praveen.
So I think there was also a question about project. How is a project management role different from product management role? These are very different roles, to be very honest, and you should research more about this online and learn about those. The role of a product manager is primarily to understand customer and business problems and solve it through technology. If I have to put it in one line, that's the role of a product manager. And the role of a project manager is to bring in predictability and ensure we are able to deliver as per the timelines that we've committed, right? So a project manager typically creates a project plan, establishes timelines, follows up with stakeholders to make sure whatever timelines that say they're meeting those timelines. Like leadership is has visibility about those timelines and all of that. So it is about following up, doing program management and making sure deliveries happen as per committed timelines. Product manager is about solving problems. Now your PMP certification trains you for the project management bit. Around some part of your product management role expects you to do project management as well, because as you're building products and shipping them, you need to work with stakeholders to get things done. But that will only be probably 10-20% of your role on a day-to-day basis.
Correct. Right. So, and how placement team, again, a question from an anonymous attendee, how the placement team helps to get interviews with tier 1 companies. So I'm sure this is in respect to the program that we provide. So anonymous attendee, again, I don't have your name, but yes, we have a very experienced placement assistance team, okay, who not only helps you with sort of bridging the gap between you and the companies, but we also prepare you for these interviews. So we have we have like a proper team in place where we'll teach you about how to build your crisp resume. Ram mentioned having a crisp resume, having and optimizing your LinkedIn is very, very important today. So these are the skills that we teach you. We also have mock interviews, we also have just in time interviews. For example, if you have an interview with Flipkart, okay, let's say in next 2 days, we will try to get somebody from the similar background, like Amazon or somebody like that, and we'll schedule an interview with the recruiting manager of that firm, so that you get the confidence in terms of how you can crack such interviews from similar companies. So these are the kind of resources that we have for you. It's just that it's very important that you complete all the modules, you completely focus on the program. And then the career assistant team plays its role as well. But yeah, we definitely help you in bridging those gaps. Now we also have Upgrad Recruit, if you are all are aware, which is our sister concern, which also helps in placements as well. So yeah, that this is how we help you in placements. If you have any further questions, please feel free to get in touch with our academic team. I've shared you the details of our program and the link. You can share details with us and our academic team will get in touch with you, understand what is your current profile, where you are at your professional journey, and what is the outcome that you're expecting, and they will then help you to select a right program for you. I hope this kind of answers your question. One just last question I'm going to take, which is again from an anonymous attendee. I'm working at 18 LPA. Background is of supply chain in a company that had its IPO recently and trying to get into product, but I don't have a prior experience. I'll be counted as a fresher in product. What's the best way to look a good fit to the companies to be at least given an opportunity? Yeah, I think I'm contributing with my inputs here and there to tweak a few products which are sensible as for the engineering team here. Any way to get something documented in that respect to have it on resume, how to go about the situation. So quickly, Ram, if you can just address this one.
I think a couple of things. One, how do you document what you've done, which is suitable for a product management role? I think what I would encourage you is seek out to people in your network and try to get reference, let's say PRDs, product requirement documents, or any roadmap documents that they might have created, and try to learn from that template and try to document whatever you've done in that format, right? So which will, one, give you the exposure in terms of what kind of documents and you do as a PM. Also, it will help you showcase your work in a product management way, right? That's one. Second, since you're already working in a supply chain domain, while you seek out opportunities for product management, seek out opportunities in the similar field as well. Like, for example, if I talk about Flipkart, we have eCart, which is a logistics partner for us. We have warehousing products which help us with in our supply chain. So there are companies like Delivery, Blackbuck, who kind of also operate in supply chain related products, right? And all of them have product management roles across the board. So seek out to companies which are in a similar domain to yours, so where you can quickly apply the domain knowledge or business knowledge that you've acquired in your current role, and which will also kind of give recruiters that confidence that you can get started on that role faster, and that will help you succeed in a better way in the beginning.
Right, great. So I think this is what we had. Thank you so much, Ram, for answering your questions that we had in the Q&A. Unfortunately, there are a few questions, but due to time constraint, we won't be able to take those questions. But yeah, again, I knew, and it's evident that this 1 hour is not going to answer all the questions that you have, right? So not a problem. You can always get in touch with us. Like I said, we have our academic team. You can get in touch with our team and get all your questions answered. And yeah, this is what we had for you. I'm just going to end the session with the last poll. Just it's important for us to understand as well, how the session was, and we can then optimize it as well, and make your experience better. So yeah, just go ahead and cast your votes for the last poll that we have for the session. Meanwhile, any good communities that you can recommend for aspiring PMs, Ram?
I think there are a lot of them. Honestly, I'm spoiled for choice. So I can probably I can probably share with Subhada some of the communities or the links to popular web kind of podcasts which talk about product management, or blog sites as well. And Subhada can in turn share it with you guys.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Last question, then I think we'll be done also with the Q&A. What's the difference between product manager and product owner?
Yeah, I think it's a loose definition, like I mentioned, right? I think roles differ slightly across different orgs. I mean, honestly speaking, there's not a lot of difference. Some companies term it as product owner and some companies term it as product manager. The day-to-day responsibilities and work that you do don't matter, don't differ a lot. That's a one-liner answer to that. And a lot of companies also have a role called TPM, Technical Product Manager, which is also very similar looking. Some aspects might be here and there slightly different, but all of these roles are very similar in nature, and the kind of competencies or skill sets that you need to showcase are also very similar in nature.
Right, great. Thank you so much, Ram, for taking all the questions and extending the time. Yeah, so now I'm going to stop. I'm not going to take any further question because we've answered almost all of them. So yeah, and just moving back to the poll, I think most of the participants have said, just except one, that the session was helpful. What was most value adding, the topic and the speaker covering the topic in easiest way possible. That's great. Thank you so much, participants. I think there was one participant who said it was not helpful. I'm just sharing my email ID. You can let me know what recommendations you have. I would be very, very happy to understand from you. And yeah, thank you so much, participants. Also, do not forget to check out our program as well. It's a very immersive program, and we've designed the curriculum with having industry experts like Ram, who have helped us in designing the curriculum, which is aligning with what is going on in the industry and what are the competencies that are required in the industry. And then we also have 3 specializations for the program, and we have a very strong career assistance team and the program is backed up with a lot of real-time case studies and projects, capstone projects that you would be working on. So it's definitely going to be an interesting journey. Don't forget to check out our program and share details with us, and like I said, we would be very, very happy to assist you. So yeah, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for joining us, and I hope to see you all in the upcoming sessions. Participants wishing to enroll into the program, just go ahead and start filling your application, and you can easily enroll into the program as well. And I hope we have answered your questions, so you can now take an informed decision. So yeah, thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much, Ram.
Thanks, Subhada.
Okay, great. Thank you. Bye-bye.